Good morning, seculars, or afternoon or evening, whenever you're listening. Welcome to Secular Minority. I am your host, Sunny Secular, and on this podcast, we give a non religious, humanist perspective on life. We bring up current topics in social media. We share our deconversion stories. Just think of this as a safe place for the extraordinary. Your race, ethnicity, gender, orientation, it doesn't matter. There's no shunning here. You're all welcome. Now, as a side note, I just want to let you know that all the notes for today's episode will be on the website, secularminority.com, as well as the links for the guest and all of his info as well. It will be in the description box of the YouTube channel. And if you're thinking about creating your own podcast, check out the great people at Buzzsprout. They have a great, awesome setup. It was easy, the payments are low, and the support team is awesome. I'll have that link on the website as well. Now, let's welcome today's guest. Today's guest I met on TikTok. He has over 1,000 subscribers. Actually, it's over 14,000 followers, I'm sorry, on TikTok. He is located also on YouTube as well as Instagram. On TikTok, his name is DeanGrove's son. That's DeanGrovesun. Welcome, DeanGrove. How are you?
Thank you. I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing all right. Thank you for taking the time out to join the podcast today.
You're very welcome.
All right, so before we get into, anything about the deconversion, I wanted to ask you, where did you come up with your TikTok name?
DeanGrove's son. My mother, she got pregnant with me when she was 16. So it was just me, her, and my grandparents. Their last name was Grove.
Okay.
My middle name is Dean. My grandfather's middle name is Dean, so DeanGrove's son.
Okay, all right, that's good. Now, I did notice that you said that you grew up Pentecostal. So what was it like growing up as little D?
Little Dean, yeah, he was baptized in the blood straight from when I popped out the womb. My grandfather was a preacher, great grandfather was a preacher, so I knew nothing else. It was just the Holy Spirit, speak in tongues, believe, don't question anything. And that's how we was raised. Yep.
Okay, all right. So did you have any difficulties in school?
Um, no difficulties in school. I love school,
Okay.
especially high school and everything. So I played sports and everything, so I have no difficulties now.
Okay. So growing up Pentecostal, and you said you spoke of speaking in tongues and things like that, did that come natural for you, or was it something that you felt like was a little off?
Well, as I got into my teens, mid-teens, it seemed weird as far as the speaking in tongues part, the shouting part, because of the simple fact I started going to the club.
Mhm.
And the same people I used to see at the club Saturday night would be in church Sunday morning.
Yeah.
They was shaking their butt for the devil, I guess, at night, and then Sunday morning come and they speaking in tongues and shaking their butt for Jesus in the morning. So then
Mhm.
it kind of started becoming a cornucopia of questions and different ideas I started to have at that time.
Okay, all right. So when you became a teenager and was going to the clubs, that's when you really started questioning your whole belief system. What was your
Um,
aha moment?
when I was like 8,
Okay.
yeah, it was the Adam and Eve story because my grandfather used to make us get in front of the congregation and recite what we learned in Sunday school.
Oh
And
wow. I
I
know
asked
that
my
was kind of
grand,
hard.
oh yeah, that it made it easier to be able to do stuff like this, talk in front of people when you don't know how many it is, or when you're in a crowd of 10,000. I used to do hip hop back in the day, but
Oh,
it
okay.
made it easier. But yeah, it's just that the Adam and Eve story. Once Cain slew his brother, and there was 3 left. I'm 8 years old, mind you. And I was like, well, Grandpa, who did Cain marry? He went off to a land of Nod. That means it was already established.
Mm-hmm.
So if it was already established, how? When there was only 3 people. And he was like, don't worry about all that. Just believe. Boom. And that just believe part did something to my inner being, did something to my
Mm-hmm.
soul, to where I was like, no, 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 no. Back then, there was no social media. I'm 46. There was no internet. So you had to look everything up in the encyclopedia. So you had to do some real research, you know what I mean? And I started, and that started my journey right then when I was like 8 years old.
Okay,
Yep.
okay. Okay, so I noticed too on your TikToks. You came in on TikTok in June of 2020. And I've
Correct.
noticed that in your TikTok videos, you often talk about the Orishas and the ATR, African tradition religions.
Yes.
Um, with you knowing about that, how were you able to, first of all, who taught you about the Orishas? And then second of
Yeah.
all, how did you be able to move from there to atheism?
Yeah. It's a juggle because it's not that I believe. To me, all gods are mythology.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my true atheism. I have 60,000 followers on Facebook, including my mother, my grandmother, and everybody that's at the church because we own a church. So in order for not to hear their mouths all the time about my atheism, I went to TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
Being that there's so many different type of people and platforms in TikTok, I had to find my own niche.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just giving people who look like me and you and other option other than those Abrahamic religions. You know
Right.
what I mean? That paint everything. If you're gonna go with something, I figured let's give them an option. Let's give them something that look like us.
Mm-hmm.
So I started with the Orishas. I got, different South African, Northern African, Eastern African gods that I'm still going to present on my page. But the Orishas are like my favorite. West African, I love the Orisha. So I'll do a
Right.
couple more of them and then let that settle in. Yep.
Yeah. Now I noticed when I was studying them, I noticed the parallel between the Orishas and what they have the Greek mythology. You know, there's
Oh
an
yeah.
alternative for Zeus, there's an
Yep.
alternative for Athena, there's an alternative for, all of them. So
Yep.
that part that I liked, you know what I mean? But it's still, like you said, it's still fictional characters. It
Exactly.
just on different skin.
On different skins. So that's what I was saying. Just I just want to give our people, just options. I mean, that Jesus, believe all you want, you know what I mean? But also study the origins of Christianity, study the origins of the Yoruba Orishas, study the origins of where everything came from. And then you can get a complete understanding because I mean, there's 4,200 gods currently being worshipped around the globe.
Mm-hmm.
They believe in 4,199, just one less than I do. I mean, we're all one God away from
Yeah.
becoming atheist. But just people refuse to study. I think it's the cognitive dissonance. It's the breaking of their foundation that prevents them from moving forward when it comes to religion and spirituality, things of that nature. Gotta break that chain, man.
Right. Right. Now, when it comes to, I noticed you said that you your parents and everything is still in the church, and then you have them on
Roots.
Facebook. Was it hard for you to separate, or did they give you slack for doing it?
At first, because my grandfather he can word for word that Bible, so when I was coming out, when I decided to come out, I had to know that I had to have everything had to be tight. It was going
Yeah.
to be a clash of the Titans. And as soon as he did, it was a clash of the Titans. I knew my stuff, he knew his stuff, but his stuff is based on one book. My stuff is based on years of studying and scientific, archaeology, theology. It's all mixed in. So when I did come out, he he still messes with me every now and then. Yeah, you just need to come to church and it's gonna rub off on you. They treat it like a code. But
Yeah.
lately, they settled in. They just don't talk to me about it. They still ask me to come to church. I ain't got no problem with that. When the king calls, you come. And I'll sit off in the back of the church on TikTok. You know what I mean? But or Facebook, but they just want me there. So I ain't got no problem with that. It's a balance. My family is deeply rooted in Pentecostal. The original person that started the Black Pentecostal, C.H. Mason, used to come over my great grandfather's house to spend a night while he was traveling throughout the United States, trying to get it together. So I mean, I'm deeply rooted. So so it's kind of hard because they expect me to be the next, because my father passed about 5 years ago. So they expect me to be the next preacher. Well, thank you. They expect me to be the next preacher, you know what I mean? So it's that tug of war that I'm constantly going through. So my dynamic is kind of different from a lot of atheists that you may speak with. Yeah.
How would you, if you came across someone in your in the church who, you know, looked at what you were doing and was like, you know what, that does sound right. I've been, you know, following you on TikTok and YouTube and things like that. How would you get them to start questioning it and take that leap over, especially if they're in the same religion, the Pentecostal, and they really believe that speaking in tongues is from God? And how would you pull them out?
I stopped trying to convert people like decades ago. Mostly, it's a journey. You know, this everybody got a certain individual journey. If somebody did come to me and be like, "Yo, I'm thinking about it," all I got to do is say, question everything. I mean, it's real broad, but if from the first moment you open the Bible, it says on day 1 he created the light. Okay, fast forward to day 4, he created the sun and the moon.
Right.
Question that.
Right.
What determined those other 3 days if there wasn't already a sun and the moon? I mean, it's little things. You just got to question everything. If you question everything and you go to the source in the beginning of it, you'll find your way. You'll move away from it. The Bible itself will cause you to move away from it.
And you know what I'm going to bring up?
When
a lot of TikTokers talk about slavery wasn't condoned in the Bible.
Lord.
What do you say about the fact that there's so many people of color, Black people who are Christian, and that type of, what would you say about that? What do you think about that when they say that slavery wasn't endorsed in the Bible?
I think of a picture of my mom. When she was like 12, and she's holding her hand together in the praying motion. And I'm thinking that mentality, you can't break that mentality. You can pick up their Bible that they're holding and show them the verse, and they'll make an excuse to condone what that verse said. I can bring up about, at the very least, 22 verses, that condone slavery.
Right.
The most popular being slaves obey your master, and you know, love them, obey them like you do Christ. That in itself would make you be like, what?
Right.
I can show them the slave Bible where they took out all the rebellions and all that, but just had people be servitude. You know what I mean? Yeah. I can show them that. I can show them the Potomac Indians of South America in 1977. They changed the entire Bible just for those Native Americans in South America, and said that they're the ones that killed Jesus, just to get them to be subservient. You know what I mean?
Right.
And they still wouldn't believe. Because it's a mental thing. Right. So it's tough.
Right.
Yeah. Because no matter what you show them, it wouldn't matter.
I've found that a lot of people who have, so there are 2 sets of people. The one set is the diehard Christians who you know, you can't tell me nothing about Jesus. If you do, you're the devil. And then you have the other side who have moved away from what they call white Christianity, but have replaced it with the Orishas. So how would you interpret that? The reason why that happens?
They're coming home. They're coming back to the original, because the use of God in an African term is a misnomenclature. They're not gods. They're just aspects of human life. You know what I mean?
Right.
They're not gods as in some invisible sky daddy, you know, playing us like pawns. It's like you have different aspects of our life, like the wind may blow. Let's attribute it to such and such. The
Right.
water is sweet on this side. Let's attribute it to such and such. But being a Western civilization, we call those gods. So
Mm-hmm.
basically, when somebody are moving to from those Abrahamic religions onto Orishas or things of that nature, it's just them moving back to spirituality.
Right.
Because we're if they pray to anything, it would be to their ancestors. Not really praying, it's just acknowledging that I am my ancestor. I'm looking at my great 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 grandfather every time I look at my own skin. It's just returning to self. That's all. That's what I think about it.
So, do you believe that there is a such thing as spirituality, and how would you define that?
Ooh, that's broad. That's broad. Yeah. Spirituality, I think it was the beginning of man questioning his surroundings. The beginning of man having enough time, got some food set aside, I got water set aside, I don't have to work as much. Now let me question my universe around me. That's the spirituality. Not worshiping an individual, but questioning, why is my plants growing? Why are my plants growing? Why is the river flowing north instead of south? Just questioning and then attributing those earthly or universal occurrences to something, giving a title to it, giving a name to it, not just worshiping it. It's a separation between the two.
Okay,
You know?
so in your definition, spirituality is not like a spirit, a God spirit. It's more like just questioning. So it just be questioning.
Or being one with nature. Spirituality, just being one with nature. We are nature. We are stardust from our very being. You break us down to our very last compound, the elements. We are everything that we see. That's spirituality. You are what you are. Everything is the same. We are connected. I believe that is spirituality.
Okay, so let me ask you this then. No, because I'm trying to get a understanding.
Yeah.
So as a non-believer, how does spirituality fit into that sentence? Because you said spirituality was just simply questioning, but on the
Hmm.
for someone on the outside looking in, they'll be like, "Oh, he does believe in God. He's just calling it nature. He's just calling it
That's what
nature. It's the same thing."
I appreciate spirituality more than I would somebody praying to a god. Not that I'm either. I'm neither one. Neither spiritual, neither praying to a god or one like that. But I will appreciate somebody who can recognize that they are one with nature better than I could respect someone who's thinking that there's a god up above or a person up above, a deity up above who's controlling my life and calls it free will. It they just don't jive with me. Both of them don't jive together.
Hmm. And that I've noticed that a lot of atheists and pagans kind of get along because pagans believe, that it's nature and like you said, the wind is this and the sky is this.
Yeah,
So,
just
yeah.
it's natural, it's nature. Yeah, just pure nature. I mean, even the littlest things, like if you say, well, I'm going to get that $100 if this doesn't happen, knock on wood. Knocking on wood, that's a pagan ritual.
Mm,
That's what they used to do to their god. In order to get their god's attention, they would knock on a tree because they believed their god lived in trees. So
right.
they would knock on the tree. So knock on wood derived from that. Little things like that, even if you're saved, sanctified, and filled with the Holy Ghost, you don't know that that's what you're doing. You're knocking on wood, you're speaking to another God. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
people don't know that.
Mm-hmm.
But they let
Right.
that slide. But that's okay. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So, yeah, that's another reason why I say question everything. Because you got to know what you're talking about in order to be with these cults or with these gangs. I call them gangs because that's basically what they are.
Yeah. They have on this thing and yeah, that is true.
I mean, because you get a room full of Catholic, a Catholic, a Baptist, and a Pentecostal in the same room with the Mormon. They have the same God, but they do not. They will disagree on 80% of the things they're talking about
Mm-hmm.
because they're with that gang. That's
Mm.
and they will fight. I would hate to say they will fight to the death, but it's been that way in the past. They will fight to the death because of their sect. There's 45,000 sects of Christianity. Why?
Right.
They're the same God. Why don't he come down and say, yo, this is my rule. This is what I want. No, let it split into 45 different sects though. So I mean,
And they all
yeah,
think that the other one is wrong.
yes, yes. Oh goodness, yeah, definitely.
Okay, so I'm going to take a break right here and break
Okay,
away from the atheists and just go to social media. So I'm going to
uh-huh.
ask you your opinion.
Okay,
On the news the other day, we all saw it was the death of DMX. He died at age 50. And also simultaneously at the time this is happening,
thanks.
they had the George Floyd case, you know, and it was aired and everything like that.
Yeah,
In your opinion, do you think there's a stigma with um the Black community and substance abuse, and how come it's not being addressed properly?
yeah, but that's been engraved for decades. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you can go as far as the 20s and 30s when heroin was introduced into the jazz. You know what I mean? It it stuck with Black people, or especially minorities, because marijuana 20 years before that in the early 1900s stuck with the Mexicans. That's how they end up getting most of the Mexicans out of the West Coast and the Southwest regions. Fast forward to the 60s, and then you have the civil rights movement. More drugs introduced into the neighborhood. Fast
Right.
forward to the 80s, and you got Reaganomics. Reagan blew us out the water with the crack epidemic. I think from that point on, it became super glue to us because you had the crackhead queens and the crack whores and things of that nature. But every time they would show it, I'm old enough to remember that they would show a Black woman
Right.
in the hood with a kid. You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
it's stuck since then. That's only what, 3 generations ago?
And they talked about the crack babies.
Yeah, and the
Is
crack babies,
mm,
exactly. But they just want us to just say no. But then from the 80s, you fast forward 30 years, and the opium epidemic hits their ass. And I'm
it's
sorry, I didn't mean to curse.
quiet. It's quiet.
And
No,
yeah,
you're
but there's
fine.
all type of programs coming up in commercials and positivity about their epidemic.
Right.
When it was us, they attach welfare to it. They attach poorness to it. They attach drugs. They launched an entire war against us, and people made millions of dollars. Like the show Cops. If it wasn't for crap cops, that show Cops would even existed.
Yeah,
You
everybody
know what I mean?
remember
So
that
it
bad
stuck to
boys,
us.
bad boys.
Yeah, what you gonna do? What you gonna do?
Where they
Y'all
come
watched it,
from.
my damn stuff. I guess I contributed. And then at the same time, gangster rap hit late 80s, early 90s. And that's all they were pushing. Hey, drug, black, kill, drugs. We're about that drug. And you see George Floyd. They trying to say, hey, he was high. Who cares? The dude was on his neck for 8 minutes. DMX
Exactly.
had his stuff. Yeah. And it's just, it's terrible the way it goes. I don't think it can be reversed because unless we gut the system, it's going to be the same stigma.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, because people, when the addiction does, first of all, and I know if I say this, what's going to happen, but first of all, when Malcolm X said that I don't see any poppy fields in the hood, and you have to be bringing it in, you have to be bringing in the guns.
Yep. No gun
they're
manufacturers
they're
either.
not, yeah, they're not manufactured here. Somebody's
Yep.
bringing them in. How come nobody's questioning where they're coming from?
Yep.
Now, he was able to say that when he turned, but before then he was
Mm-hmm.
participating in it. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Yep.
So not only are outside sources, people who have the ability to bring it in or bringing it in to the neighborhoods and then pointing at you for getting addicted to it, but they're also not giving you the assistance that you need. Now, there are more programs now than there was back in the 80s,
Indeed. Yeah.
but it's still, like you said, it's still a stigma to that because of the fact that the way it's been going on for such a long time, for years and years and years.
Yes, ma'am.
Even someone who watched TV because they didn't have Black people around them, that vision in their head is what they see. Oh, okay, black people all lived in the projects. I never lived in the projects. So
Mm-hmm.
you know what I'm saying? What you talking
Yep.
about? Oh, black people only have one parent. No, I have both of my parents. You know what I mean?
Me too.
What are you talking? But that's what they see on
Yeah.
television. That's what they see in the
Yep.
movies. And so do you think that the people who are pointing the fingers are the ones who need to come up with more programs